Okay, part two. Lecture video on the market crash of 29 and the politics of that, which we'll get a little bit into here as we move forward. So, this is part two. Make sure you watch part one first. Here we go. So, we talked about one way that the market crash turns into a wider depression. Here's another. We talked about at the beginning of the video banks. By the 1920s, so many Americans trusted banks. Safe place to put your money. Money on paper. They've got your money for you if you ever need it. You could take out loans there. All that kind of stuff. Well, banks got clobbered in the market crash too. Please don't think that banks, when you deposit money in there, have a little special place in a vault where they say, this is John Smith's money. Or this is Roger Connor's money. No, they don't do that. The money that you deposit in that bank goes into their general money for everything. And they use that money to do what banks have to do. Make money, profit. They loan people money and collect interest. They invest money in the market. And that money they invest money in the market is money on paper. Well, in the stock market crash of 29, so many banks across the country got hit hard and took great losses when the market crashed. And the market doesn't crash for a day or two. The market has stayed down. Here we are, again, 5-6 months after the crash, well into 1930. People are hurting. Just like that person lost his job in March of 1930 following the October 29 crash. Well, let's say by like April or May of 1930, you're listening to the radio and you're hearing these stories, scary stories about, though you live in the East, out in California, 5 banks closed today. Just shut down. Wow, 5 banks closed today and just shut down? What does that mean? Does that mean people just lost whatever was in there? Yeah. Well, some very, turns out to be smart and prudent people, went to their bank. Maybe you live in southern Connecticut. You walk in that bank and say, you know what? I'm cashing out my account today. I want my money. Banks aren't crazy about doing that, but they have to. So they cash out your account. You had $2,200 in that bank, your entire life savings. You were smart. A month later, sometime May 1930, near June, your friend goes into that bank. Except when they show up to the bank on this particular day, they see a lot of angry people at the front door. You see, what you don't know and they don't know is that the night before, your friendly banker, and most of the banks, you knew the banker. They were local people. They were people you got to know. It wasn't big corporate banks like we have today. Well, your friendly banker closed the bank yesterday after he closed his door. Why? Because as he looked at his money on paper, he realized he was running out of money. Because every day, more and more people, fearful of what they're hearing about banks failing, are going and closing their accounts out. Already hurt by the depression, the economy's not growing, it's going in the wrong direction. This guy doesn't want to be there on the day someone comes up to cash out their account and he says, sorry, I don't have your money. He's afraid that he'll be hurt if he does that. So the night before, he put his hat on his head, put his coat on, got in his car, and he drove for the hills. But before he did that, he put a sign on the door. Bank closed. Bank closed. And that doesn't mean it's just a little holiday. No, that means that bank's closed forever. And you know what? All your money in that bank is gone forever. Whatever you had in that bank, you're never getting it back. If your life savings was in that bank, your life savings was just lost. No fault of your own. But there were no safeguards back in those days. No regulations such as we would have today, no insurance, nope. If the bank closed and failed, whatever was in it was lost. And that might mean your life savings. Can you imagine that? You might not have had one dime in the stock market. Most people who get affected by bank failures didn't. But just like that person who lost his job, who had no money in the market, Now with bank failures, which are going to become pervasive throughout 1930 and 31, you learn the lesson in the hardest of way. Your life has been ruined. That market crash didn't ruin it, but this wider depression, a sign of a very sick economy, an economy where so much of the money was money on paper but not real money, an economy of overproduction, inflated values of money, and all of that has come crumbling down. Americans are hurting. And what I want to jump into in the next few minutes before we call this over, and we'll pick up with this on Monday most certainly, and you're going to see more about this in the video too. Herbert Hoover, remember, back in 1928 was elected the president to be the president of the Roaring 30s. Because everybody thought Roaring 20s is going to move in to become the Roaring 30s. And all of a sudden, they don't. All of a sudden, the 30s become a pretty miserable period. If you go to the New Deal era politics slides I posted for today, we're only going to look at a few. And if you go on your politics, the Depression packet to Roman numeral 4, we'll get some of these. And again, we'll pick up with this through the video, reading, and most certainly in class on Monday. So, go to slide 2. Herbert Hoover was the perfect 20s president, where being dull was fine. He's boring to listen to on the radio. But you know what? So were Harding and Coolidge. Didn't affect their popularity. They were very popular. The Roaring 20s. Now, when the market crashes in 29, Hoover does take to the radio, realizing communicating with the American people is important. But Hoover's message was always something like this, in a very dull, laconic Midwestern accent. We are okay. Things will get better. This is just the business cycle, natural ups and downs. Signs of recovery are already in place. Be strong. Things will get better. And in the months that followed the market crash, most people had no reason, not to believe Hoover. Hoover wasn't vilified. Nobody blamed him for this at the outset. It wasn't his fault. But as this depression worsens, lengthens, takes more victims of unemployment, which by 1931, unemployment has gone from, back in the start of 1930, unemployment in the country was 4% or so. Unemployment in the country by 1931 is over 10% and rising rapidly. It'll peak out in early 1933. Get this. Nearly 25% of the American workforce will be unemployed by early 1933. Basically 1 out of every 4 Americans. That's where this train is headed, and it's not in a good direction. As it continues to persist through 1930 and certainly into 31, Hoover begins to be a character in America who's not well regarded, because if for nothing else, Americans are sick of hearing him say things are okay. They're saying it's not. We're tired of this. And as this gets worse, more and more Americans need a punching bag. And Hoover's a convenient one and right there for them to hear every day. Well, go to slide 3. Remember, Herbert Hoover's a conservative, a rugged individualist. He is not progressive in any way. And like Coolidge and Harding, who were successful with this, and Hoover, who was elected on this message, he's anti-progressivism. He's anti-big government, does not believe in government regulation, certainly does not believe in government doing things like make work jobs for people who are out of work. That's not in Hoover. Certainly not in favor of welfare-type programs. Remember how he ran against Al Smith in 1928 against that type of notion idea. But things have changed in America, and Americans are more and more getting desperate. And in desperate times, people will embrace ideas that might have seemed radical earlier, things they wouldn't have done. Herbert Hoover firmly believes, though, that it is not the role of the federal government to be all things to all people. The federal government cannot solve all your problems. So he rejects the idea that we should maybe create some federal jobs, find ways to get some money into people's pockets. He says that is not the function of the federal government. Some counties give aid. Some towns or cities you live in might give aid. That's local government. That should be the closest to the people. The federal government should not do that. The problem is things get worse. In 1930, Hoover, conservative Republican, what's his solution to most things? Raise tariffs. Create more American jobs to stop getting people from buying European goods. So in 1930, a conservative Republican Congress passed and Hoover signs into law the Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1930, which is one of the largest tariff increases in American history. The tariff rate will raise on over 20,000 different manufactured industrial goods in the United States. Now, tariffs can be a good thing, but in this scenario, it was too much. The result of this is hard. The goal was to keep jobs in America, but it actually loses jobs. European countries that have been in a depression the entire 20s, many of them just completely now stop buying any American industrial manufactured goods, which cuts off a major market of ours. Some of these European countries retaliate and set very high tariffs on their own goods against us. The end result is a gigantic reduction, almost 50%, in nearly all American imports and exports, which defeats the purpose here. We end up with a net loss of jobs. It's starting more and more to look like this depression is something that Hoover, whether it's his dull, uninspiring radio voice, which we know matters now, it didn't used to matter, but now voice very much does matter, his tariff policy, his refusal to do things that people might not have wanted in the 20s that they might want now, more government action, if nothing else, out of desperation. Hoover and the Republicans are in trouble. Because rule number one in politics, when things go well, the party in power gets credit. But when things go bad, the party in power gets blame. And whether it's their fault or not is irrelevant. They're going to get blamed. And come 1930, there's midterm elections. And in the 1930 midterms, slide 5, this is where we're going to stop for today. Oh, the Republicans get blamed. Democrats take 54 House seats to take a one-seat majority, erasing the Republican power in the House. The Democrats add 8 Senate seats, flip them from Republican to Democrat. Republicans will keep a thin majority, but clearly the message is here. Hoover, Republicans, if you don't fix this in the next 2 years, we're going to throw you out in 1932. All right, you're going to be moving on to a Century video momentarily. The directions are in Classroom for that. You're going to watch about 2/3 of it. You're going to watch up to about the 29-minute mark. Question number 17. The sub should give you a video guide for It's Stormy Weather, is it? The title of this. You'll watch independently. You'll watch to about 29 minutes after you meet Franklin Roosevelt and right after he gets elected president. Get through question 17, about the 29-minute mark, stop, because we're going to watch the rest on Monday after we start talking about things that the rest of the video will go into that you don't know as much about yet. And then I've got a fun activity for you after that video where you're going to be feeding a family of 5 during the Depression with actual grocery listings. Get some sense of what the human condition of the Great Depression was. It's not pretty. All right. Have a good, productive block. Work hard for me. And I'll look forward to seeing you again on Monday.